Another example, another time, so this is one, this is a picture of one of the families that invited us in. Just another example, another time, my friend and I were cycling, and we ended up actually getting lost. And so we're trying to make a lot of miles that day because our visa is ticking down. And we'd gotten lost, and we were trying to get back to the main road. And we stumble upon this family in their yurt. And they see us, and they come out, and they start talking to us. And they invite us into their home. But my friend and I, because we'd gotten lost, and because our visa was short, we didn't want to go have tea with them because that would take 2 or 3 hours, and we really wanted to make miles that day. So they tell us, they invite us in, and of course it's all in gestures, they don't really speak any English. And they invite us in to have food with them, and we decline, so we're sorry, we have to keep going. And so we're there, we're talking to them, and the wife whispers something to the little boy. And the little boy runs into the yurt, and he comes back a minute later, and he's carrying this bag full of cheese that they had made. It's essentially like, if you're not going to come in and accept our hospitality, we're going to make sure we give you something to leave with. So that was just my impression of everyone we're meeting in Mongolia. So next up, we all talk about Tajikistan, one of those famous Central Asian countries. For those of you unaware, and 6 months ago I was one of those, Tajikistan is just north of Afghanistan. And so for the next part, I'm gonna dive into some history here. So once the USSR collapsed in 1991, Tajikistan gained its independence. Right? And when it gained its independence, a huge civil war broke out by these different factions wanting power of the country. So the Civil War breaks out and it lasts for 3 years, so it was 1992 to 1995. Tens of thousands of people died, you had hundreds of thousands of people displaced. So this is my impression of the country, because I'd done a little bit of research before going to Tajikistan. So I knew A, it's north of Afghanistan. B, 20 years ago there was a horrific civil war there. So I really did not have high expectations of this country. But so I went in, for the first few days, you're cycling through the mountains, so you're not really seeing too many people. First few days, cycling through these mountains, and then eventually you're down and you hit this valley. You're in this valley, and on one side where you are is Tajikistan, and on the opposite side is Afghanistan. So these pictures actually are of Afghanistan, which we're taking pictures of. But when we were in Tajikistan, it happened to be harvest season. And so we're going through these towns, and everyone would be out picking apples or walnuts or pomegranates. And whenever they saw us, people would always look at us and they'd wave us over. And we'd go over, and these people, they would just give us the apples they had, or the walnuts they had. They wouldn't want any money. They would just give it to you, and they would send you on your way. It would even happen that you'd find somebody selling apples on the side of the road, and they'd wave you down, and they'd want you to buy apples from them. But, my friend and I, we had a bag full of apples. So we say, no, thank you, we don't want any more apples. And even when we refused to buy apples from them, they would take out their apples, and they would just give them to us for free. And so another thing that was happening in Tajikistan is whenever we were cycling, it's through these villages, people would always wave you over for tea, right? So, especially in the evenings, we'd be going through these towns, and someone would see us and wave us over for tea. And so here's one family. In the evening, we were going through this town. This guy in the middle, he's coming home from work. He sees us, and he waves us over, and he invites us in to his home for tea. Of course, once again, no English, just speaking Tajik, but through gestures, we understand what's going on. So he invites us into his home, and the tea, turns into dinner, and then the dinner, it gets late, so the dinner invitation, we end up staying in his house. We actually slept on those mats. And in the morning, my friend and I, we head out, but because it was because we were staying with this family, we kind of started late. We started around 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. Usually we try and start around 8. But so we got this late start. My friend and I were like, all right, if we get any tea invitations today, we got to decline. Okay? Visa. The visa is taken, we got to make some progress. So we start cycling, and people are inviting us into tea as we're cycling through these towns. And but we're declining, saying no thanks, we're gonna keep going. And then, so after a few hours, my friend and I, we decide to stop and have a little snack. So we stop on the side of the road and we're eating this little snack, and this farmer comes up to us and he invites us in for tea. And my friend and I, we were like, thank you. We gesture like, no thank you, we're gonna keep going. And so the farmer, he disappears in his house. And my friend and I, we don't think anything about it. 5 minutes later, his 2 daughters come out carrying tea for us. Carrying tea, teacups, and bread that they had baked themselves. And they gave it to us. So that was, I think that just captures just the generosity we felt in Tajikistan. Even when we refused their hospitality, they made sure that they went out of their way to demonstrate, or to make us feel welcome into their country. So, moving on. I'll now talk about Uzbekistan. So, as my dad was saying earlier, I was in Uzbekistan when that terrorist attack happened in New York a few months ago. I was in Uzbekistan at that moment, and of course, Uzbekistan, it's just west of Tajikistan, and the western half of the country, it's just it's a desert. Okay, so for about 2 weeks, you're cycling through a desert. So this is one day. That's the next day, the next day, and that's the next day. It's rather miserable. But so when my friend and I were cycling through this area, there's not much, not many villages or anything. So usually in the evenings we would camp. But because this was a highway, it was going to the Uzbekistan-Kazakhstan border. Because it was a highway and there's truck traffic and other cars, my friend and I would always try and find a mound of dirt to hide behind, or we'd try and find some trees that we could put the tents behind. The idea was, you don't want these truck lights shining in your tent at night, or you don't want someone who sees a tent randomly in the middle of the desert to stop and wake you up while you're sleeping. Not that we felt particularly nervous, or we didn't think it would be dangerous necessarily. It was just you're not going to get a good night's sleep if someone, if people were seeing you from the road. So usually when we were cycling through the desert, we were able to find a mound of dirt to put the tents behind, or some trees or whatever. We weren't having too many problems. But it happened, after about 2 weeks, we entered this area where it was just flat. There was nothing. There was nowhere to put the tent. So, we were looking for a place to camp, we couldn't find any. The sun goes down, and, we're still looking. And we ended up searching, I think it was a total of 2 or 3 hours. We were just searching in the dark, trying to find a spot to camp. We just couldn't find anything. And as you can see, it was actually cloudy at this point. So that made it even darker, right? Because there's no moon or stars or anything. So, it was incredibly difficult to find, really, a place to camp. Well, after 2 or 3 hours of searching for a place to sleep, we were just exhausted, mentally and physically. And, but there's nothing you can do except keep cycling. But suddenly this car stops, and this guy, he rolls down his window. Once again, not speaking any English, just gestures. Tells us, asks if we want to ride. So my friend, we're so exhausted. We say, yeah, sure, we'll take a ride. So we throw our bicycles on top of his car. We jump inside the car, and he starts going down the highway. Fortunately, there's one road, and it's going straight to the border, which is where we wanted to go. So we didn't really need to communicate about destination. But so we were actually in his car for 3 or 4 hours. We're sitting in this guy's car, and finally at 2 a.m., we show up at the border. And as we're getting to the border, my friend and I were thinking, we've been in this guy's car for 3 to 4 hours. He's probably going to want some money, which is very reasonable since he's gone out of his way to take us all this way. So he takes us and he drops us off at this border, and he takes our bikes off, and before we even know it, he shakes our hand, and he's gone. He didn't want any money from us. He was just out of his just being generous and helping us out. But that wasn't So that was great. We were out in the desert. We were in this border town. We were really happy. And across the street, we see this building, and it says Cafe Hotel. I have a picture actually. So we see this building across the street, but actually you have to imagine it's dark out, right? So we approach this, at 2 a.m., not really sure, what we're getting ourselves into, hoping that maybe they have rooms that we can sleep in for the night. We walk in, and it's this, it's like this 1950s diner or something. There's all these people, walking around. There's all these truckers just hanging around because it's a border. So this waiter comes up and approaches us, and he says something in Uzbek we don't really understand. He motions for us to follow him. When we follow him, he takes us to another waiter, and this waiter speaks English. And the waiter looks at us, and he's like, you are our guests in Uzbekistan. We feel like we have to take care of you. We're sure you're hungry. Anything you want on the menu, we'll cook it for you, free of charge. No problem. And then he says, we also have rooms. We're sure you're tired. You can stay in the rooms, no charge, free. It's no problem. And then our friend who drove us to the border, he walks in, and because this guy can speak English and Uzbek, he translates for us. And the driver simply tells us, I saw you guys needed help, and so I was happy to help you guys, but I don't want anything in return. So my friend and I had gone from being stuck in the middle of the desert, exhausted, freezing, trying to find a place to camp, and suddenly we find ourselves driven by this stranger who didn't want anything in return, taking us to this hotel where we meet another guy who gives us a free meal, a free place to stay, doesn't want anything in return. So that was my last day in Uzbekistan. It couldn't have been on a more positive note. There's our friend in front of this hotel. Okay, so the last country I'll talk about is Azerbaijan. So Azerbaijan, of course, is on the far western point of this map. And when I was in Azerbaijan, I've been cycling for about 1.5 years by this point. And I've experienced all these stories, and I figured you can't get any better. I've reached the peak of hospitality. But really, Azerbaijan just blew me away. I cycled a total of 10 days, and during those 10 days, I camped one time. And that's because I was in the middle of the mountains and nobody was around. Every other time, people invited me into their home and just gave me a place to stay. So, for example, there's this guy to the left of me. My friend and I were cycling through this town, probably about the size of Delaware. We're cycling through in the middle, and this guy, he comes up to us. He's a shepherd, so he has all these sheep that he's herding. And he's herding his sheep, and he sees us, and he comes over, he shakes our hands, and then, without a moment's pause, he invites us into his home. Doesn't even think about it. Of course, he doesn't speak any English. It's just him gesturing and going like this, making gestures and conveying the idea. But he doesn't even hesitate. It's before we know it, we're following this guy through the streets of this little town. He takes us to his home. Another time, my friend and I, we had gone to this gas station. We were kind of on the outskirts of a little town, and we decided to just go to this gas station and asked the manager if we could put a tent up behind the gas station, because they had this little grassy area. And so we go over there, and the manager, he says, yeah, no problem, you guys can camp behind the gas station. And then he invites us into the office, and we're drinking tea with him. And as we're drinking tea, he's making phone calls. We don't really know what it's about. But then half an hour later, his friend shows up, and his friend is like, you guys can come to my house and, stay here with my family. So that was this family. And then the final night, actually, this was the last time I was cycling before heading home. My friend and I, we go by this restaurant. It's fortunately it says cafe on the front, so we can figure out pretty easily what it is. So we figure out it's a restaurant, and our plan is that we'd go and we talk to the manager, and we'd tell the manager, we'd ask him if we ate dinner there, if we paid for dinner, if it'd be okay if we camped behind the restaurant. And because it's kind of out in the countryside, and they had this grassy area behind the restaurant. So we go up to the manager, and he says, yeah, it's no problem. We can, we can camp behind the restaurant if we eat there. So we go in, we eat, and we have this delicious meal of kebabs and salad and bread. And we go up to pay the guy, and he's, shakes his head. He's like, no, you guys don't need to pay. It's like, essentially, you're my guest here. So we go out, thank him profusely. We go outside and we start setting up our tent. Of course, this was in early December, so it was pretty cold. And suddenly the manager comes back up and he's like, it's too cold for you guys to go outside. And he takes us to these rooms that they have, where they have like these private eating areas. He takes us to these rooms and he says, these are heated, you guys can sleep in there. So then we start setting up our mats, we're really happy to be inside. All of a sudden we hear a knock. We open the door, the two waiters have tea, a soda, and a bunch of fruit for us. And so they drop those off. And they disappear. So we sleep inside that night, incredibly happy. In the morning, we get up and we pack up the bikes. We go inside. We say thank you. We say thank you. We get ready to head out. I was like, wait! You guys can't leave. You guys have to have breakfast. So he goes. He gets us tea. He brings out breakfast. He brings out bread and cheese and sausage for us, and we have breakfast there. And once again, my friend, we eat, and at the end, we stand up, we go up to the guy, and once again, we try and pay. Because, this guy's giving us dinner, a place to stay inside, snacks, breakfast. Remember, this is a restaurant where they make their living by selling food to people. And we had gone there with the purpose of buying food from him. But, he looks at us, and he refuses to take any money. Essentially, his thought process was, you guys are guests in our country, and it's our duty to be taking care of you. So there's the two waiters who brought us. And here's the tea and the apples and the juice that they brought us. So so that, I guess those are just some of the highlights of the last year and a half. I was trying to capture the world as I've experienced over the last during my travels. So we have a couple little fun slides for you. Major differences between the U.S. I found one. There's no shepherds walking around. I found when pretty much every country you're traveling through, you see just shepherds. As I said, you'll be through a town the size of Delaware, and you see this guy taking his sheep through there, and you have these huge traffic jams sometimes where you just have dozens and dozens of sheep on a major road just on this, holding up traffic. So that, I thought that was a pretty